are. What's up, world? It's Judge, and I've got some amazing people here. A bunch of different sources and different brilliant minds coming together, and we're just gonna get right into it, talking about the recent injustices in America. So let's start off with the topic of what recently happened with George Floyd. For those of you who are watching this now and don't know, an African American male by the name of George Floyd was brutalized, assaulted, and eventually murdered by a white police officer. But it wasn't just him on his own. There were three other officers other than him, four in total, who were all at the scene. The officer had his knee on the back of Mr. Floyd's neck, and after repeatedly saying that he couldn't breathe, he eventually passed out and later died that night in the hospital. So this event caused mass hysteria across the world. It was brutal and vicious and violent and aggressive and just totally unnecessary. And so that's what this is. This is the sort of tell-all podcast that, just vents about that whole situation. So I want to get y'all's thoughts on the whole situation. When you first heard about it, what were your initial thoughts? And as you've had time to think about it over the past few days, what are your thoughts now, about the whole situation? So whoever wants to kick it off.
You go.
Go ahead.
For me, when I first heard about it, was I believe either Instagram or Snapchat, one of them. Then it came on the news and everything. I didn't feel good. I was sad, and honestly, I cried that whole week because it's like trying to wrap my head around it and trying to figure out why. This man, he's handcuffed, he's on the ground, and he can't move, But to then put that other pressure on his neck and saying that he can't breathe, I looked at the video and it's haunting to this day. It's like, it's hard to explain, especially as a 17-year-old going into adulthood as a black man. It's like, I got to really constantly share with people that I matter, that I am also a human being, that I have emotions as well. It's like, why do I have to prove that to someone that has the same emotion, that is the same human being as me, but it's just that I'm black in America? And it just really puzzled me, and I was just confused and angry, upset, and all the above. I was just saddened about it. And my mom trying to talk to me, my dad tried to talk to me, and then my uncles called me as well too to discuss about it as well. But after that, it was like, man, like, why does this constantly keep happening to us? And yeah, it's just hard to really double down and understand. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because, being a minority or being different, from the rest of American society is just very hard. And, it also haunts me to this day that, like, the officer, like, the paramedics arrived and they checked his pulse and he kept his knee on George Floyd's neck. It's just, I don't know how to explain it. It's just shocking to see that. And, other police officers have said that that's not a tactic that they use at all. And they put him on the little thing where they were going to put him on the stretcher, and he just yanked him and put him on there. It's just so disrespectful. And these are issues that happen so much. Because, George Floyd got everyone's attention, but there's a lot of other cases that also happen that just go unnoticed, and it's just totally unacceptable, because this is a country where people were promised freedom. And, we've had so much history of just not being able to get this freedom as a minority. And it's just, it's shocking.
Yeah. Good, Aaron. Before we continue, Seth has joined on. Welcome, Seth. We appreciate you coming. We just are, weighing in on the whole George Floyd situation. Giving our initial thoughts to the situation, what we think of the situation now after a few days as the event has passed. So yeah, I believe Aidan was going to go next, and then Seth will go right into you.
Yeah, I was mainly just
Eating stuff? Sure.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and I think this is it. So we have everybody, ladies and gentlemen. That's Mickayla. She's a good friend of mine, and the only woman who decided to show up for the panel. So I appreciate her for that. I appreciate it. So thank you very much. You know Aaron. I think you know Jules, Mickayla. You don't know Seth, and you don't know Aidan, but these are two very good friends of mine. Amazing, talented performers. But we're just sharing our thoughts on the whole George Floyd situation. You'll be right after Seth. But yeah, thank you for coming.
I think at first, I think I found it similar to Jules. I found out through Instagram, but I think I also found out later than most people did. But I was just angry, but yeah, I was just super angry, and now I'm just sad, and anxious because you're the headline I saw on CNN, which I think most accurately represents how the country is, where we're at right now, is that we have two pandemics going on right now, COVID and racism. And so, yeah, this got me thinking. I can't believe that this is happening now, during this pandemic, and I can't believe that officers did that to him. And I did some research before this podcast. He was arrested for trying to buy cigarettes with counterfeit money. So, yeah, it's just shocking and just really just disheartening to see that.
Yeah, totally. I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Seth, I know you're probably having audio troubles, but if you can hear us, it is your turn to speak on the matter, if you can. If not, we'll go to Mickayla. All right, she left. All right, Mickayla, it's on you. Thoughts on the whole George Floyd situation?
Kind of like similar to what he was saying. I was really upset about everything. Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, don't mind me. I'm at the hair salon. But, yeah, when I heard about it, I was really pissed off, and I was really upset, and it really overwhelmed me. I know we know this happened in the past, this is nothing new, but I think just this situation alone made it really overwhelming, and I had to someone who's always on social media stuff, I had to take a step back and just kind of reflect on everything that's going on, because there was just so much happening, and with everything with the protests going on and things like that, it is just a lot.
Yeah. I think when I first heard about the whole situation, I don't want to say, I guess the right way to say it is, I wasn't surprised, but I wasn't surprised because of how upset I was. I was upset to the point where I was I'm not even surprised. I'm majorly pissed off about this, but I'm not surprised at all. You know what I mean? And that's crazy that, that some people, in society can be oh, I'm not surprised to a situation like this, because a situation like this should sound like that happened. They did that. Now, in any other alternate reality, if this had been different, if these were 4 black officers doing this, and the white man and the man on the ground was a white man, then it's a huge issue that's going to get taken to court and looked at the Supreme Court, and it's going to go to Congress, and it's going to go to the president, and it's going to go to all these things and all these necessary, things like that. But here we are, same scenario, different outlook. Man on the ground is of African American descent, and yet society deems it as nothing's wrong. You know what I mean? And now, mind you, lots of people are taking offense to this, but when is taking offense gonna be enough? You know what I mean? Because we've dealt with this kind of things before. Society has taken offense before, and yet here we still are taking offense to a similar situation. You know what I mean? So I was upset because of how I guess how I don't know how to say it, but I was just upset because it didn't seem like, people weren't alarmed. You know what I mean? Like when it happened, it was just like another one. You know what I mean? Like up another one. Here we go. So it was lots of emotions. Lots of emotions. I guess my next question is gonna sort of tie into everything that's been going on. So recently, last night, a bunch of people went out protesting and everything, and it got a little aggressive at times. People were thrown to the ground, and it was a back and forth tussle between protesters and law enforcement. People were arrested and such things like that. So let's get your thoughts on the whole protesting situation. Do you agree with how they do you agree with how the protesters handled themselves? Do you think that there's things that could have gone better? What do you whoever?
I think that there is a lot of anger in the Black community right now, and in general, as I'm just going to speak for like all the minorities that are not white, because this really angers everyone, and it's very hard to just sit there and just wait for something to happen when you know well that, as Judge said, like if it was a white man on the ground and for Hispanic officers instead of the other officers, Trump would probably make a tweet being like, "This is why we need to get rid of all illegals." So it's just but as a minority, you know that that's not going to be the same because that was not the scenario, and it's one, as Judge said, it's one more person that has been. So it's just devastating how it's not even shocking anymore. It's not surprising. It is shocking. It's just not surprising anymore to see another man dead because of police like this. And what's it called? I didn't even know what was the original question. Sorry. Oh, the protesters, right?
Yeah, the question. Yeah, protest.
I think that since there's a lot of anger, then that really that's driving people to like burn things. And although I heard that the fires were started by the police or something. Like that's a rumor I heard. I don't know if it's true, but that's something I heard. So, but yeah, I think that all that anger is really coming out, and I think at some point it is necessary because people need to realize that this is how bad it makes people feel when something like this happens. And people say like, well, you shouldn't loot stores, and I partially agree on that because like, we should get our voice heard, but like not, you're affecting people who worked hard, like for example, like small businesses that are being vandalized. Like those people actually, like some of those people are minorities too, and some of those people worked very hard to build their business up from the bottom. Like personally, my father built his own business, and it's been very hard for him because all the challenges that come with being a minority. And if his business would have gotten vandalized for a cause that's supposed to support him, then it's really not serving a good purpose. Although it does get your voice heard, it's hurting people at some extent too. So I think there should be a limit and a control, a balance of whether these things are necessary to get our voice heard.
Yeah, I agree with you, Aaron. Like when I saw the protests and everything, it was like both yes and no. Like yes, sometimes we have to be what's the word? I forgot the word, but sometimes you have to be kind of sometimes you have to have protests like that so your voices can be heard. But when you burn down buildings or you burn down people's businesses and everything that you, like you said, that they worked hard for, it's like, that's not the point. You burn people's houses down, you break their car windows or whatever. It's like, that even though that's anger, and we all feel that anger and frustration, but at the same time, that's not right. That's someone's restaurant, that's someone's building that they live in, that's someone's property. So yeah, radical. There you go. Sometimes you have to be radical for people to listen to you, because for decades we've had peaceful protests, on and off, on and off, on and on. People they see, but it's not like creating enough change for us. But when you become radical at times, they start to hear you. But yeah, like I said, it's both. I agree and disagree, because we have to create change for our world, and we have to, make sure this does not happen again. That's like when we said it about Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland, and it's just still like an ongoing pattern at times, but we still need to make change. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I agree with both Aaron and Jules. They're like, I think I get it. Protests are scary, like it is burning buildings and it is about like a lot of people. But I think honestly, right now, I this early as a people, it's all we can really do other than emailing and reaching out to the officers and reaching out to local and federal government. But yeah, I think we need a way to express how furious we are about this. So yeah, I think, and that doesn't necessarily like Aaron and Jules, you said, justify the burning of small businesses and everything that's been all their hard work being destroyed. But I think it gets a point across, and I think by seeing how people feel about this, people will take it more seriously. At least that's what we hope, right? So yeah, that's my stance.
Awesome. Yeah. Seth, if you can hear us, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you can.
I can hear you now.
Perfect.
Thanks, Judge.
Keep in the mix. Wonderful. I'm glad to have you, buddy. So I guess we'll go to you because you haven't been here for the brunt of it, but we were just talking about, the recent George Floyd situation, of course, as you know, and then, the protest that took place last night and how that was handled. So I guess, first off, your thoughts on George Floyd, and then afterwards, your thoughts on the whole protesting situation and how it was handled and, the things that occurred last night. So go ahead.
Absolutely, Judge. Thanks for coordinating this, by the way. This is really great and important. First of all, with the entire George Floyd situation, it should have never happened. It's one of the worst, most despicable things I've ever seen. It's to use such a position of power to spread such bigotry and violence is absolutely terrible. And it's a disgrace that all 4 of the officers there have not been charged with murder. And the officer who committed the murder hasn't been charged with first-degree murder instead of third-degree murder, because when Mr. Floyd was pleading for his life, I believe that shows premeditation. So that entire situation is absolutely terrible. Regarding the protests, it's very complicated, I believe. It's protesting is such an effective form of getting your voice heard, and I'm with the situations with the protests where it's turned violent or looting or robbery has happened. I think it's very complicated because on one hand, I think is violence and doing bad things the response? Is that the adequate response to a terrible thing that happened? Maybe not. But then on the other hand, I also think when there were peaceful protests, did people listen and was there actual change implemented? No. So things sometimes have to change and it's not always pretty. Like if you go back to Stonewall for the LGBTQ community, that they implemented change by force. That by force, how do I say this? Only good things happened for the LGBTQ community after Stonewall, and Stonewall did turn violent. Or even with the founding of this country, the Boston Tea Party, only when things turned violent and we took a stand, not just by peacefully protesting, did things happen, and did we, as the United States of America, get freedom from Britain. So I think it's very complicated when it's regarding the more violent or looting edge of the protesting.
Great. Thanks, Seth. Appreciate that. Mickayla, it is your turn. Thoughts on the protesting situation that happened last night?
Kind of like everybody else, I'm kind of split, because like how you can't tell someone how to feel about the situation, you can't expect them to react like that, you know what I mean? But I feel like, kind of like they were saying earlier, there's an extent, and I feel like if you're going to go out and protest, like burn places down, things like that, that's a huge risk. That one, if you're willing to take that risk, I feel like you need to be careful on how you do that, because you can't just go crazy and burning like any building down, because regardless of that, there's still people, like you guys said earlier, how we're still working hard, and so might even, especially like small Black-owned businesses that are like being burned down and things like that. Like you have to be careful. You can't just go crazy with it just because you're upset about it, no matter how upset you are.
Absolutely. I was watching the blunt of it actually unfold on the news, and I was watching everything happen and everything go down. And it was hard. It's hard to put into words. You know what I mean? Like this entire situation, it's really something that takes a lot of thought before you can talk about it. And that's sort of why I waited to talk about this thing, because it's still pretty fresh, but I knew that if I got on it right away, it would be much harder to have this conversation with you guys, because it's still fresh in the brain, like it's just happening, right? But give it a few days and let it simmer down and let your mind assess what's actually going on, then yeah, absolutely we can talk about it. And it's still pretty fresh even now, so right? But I feel like this conversation is good, because if we don't talk about it, then what does that say about us? You know what I mean? Because at that point, it just becomes about us being all talk, and not about, the actual business of creating change. You know what I mean? And that's why, a lot of posts on Instagram have been saying, like, if you are constantly posting stuff on Instagram and showing the world that you care, that's a good first step and that's a good start. But you got to, take the initiative and go out there and try and do something, with it. You know what I mean? The survey, that they're asking everybody to take, the poll that they're asking everybody to take, the petition is what it's called, that thing that they're trying to get everybody to sign for the firing and arrest of the officers, great first steps. So I think the protest in a way is a great first step, but I think it's only half the battle. And I think when you look back at the 60s and that whole civil rights era, Malcolm X wasn't necessarily against anything that, Dr. King was doing. You know what I mean? He was for it, and he understood that, right? And he was like, I'm proud of being Black, and we need change too. But as we've seen, peacefully protesting and speaking our mind hasn't always done us the justice that we deserve, right? So that's why sometimes we need to take action. You know what I mean? And that's why I think Malcolm X is such a polarizing figure and doesn't get enough credit because of what Martin Luther King was able to do. But Malcolm X was, he just added another layer to what King was trying to do. You know what I mean? He was fine, and he was all for, protesting and all that. But he was like, hey, if it comes down to it, if they're going to take a swing at us, there's no reason why we shouldn't take a swing back at them. You know what I mean? Because at that point, it doesn't become about assaulting a white man. It becomes about assaulting someone who's assaulting you, right? It becomes about defending yourself against assault. You know what I mean? So that's why I think protests are interesting, because once they take a turn, it's really interesting to see how people react, and it sort of shows their mentality on the whole situation. Are they peaceful? Are they more of a Dr. King type, only about peace, or are they gonna be the Malcolm X and take a stand and fight back? So I think protests are interesting that way, and are always going to be controversial, no matter what the issue is, no matter what the subject is. I think protests are always going to be controversial. Let's see. Well, the sad truth is that George Floyd wasn't the only person to be assaulted and brutally killed during quarantine. The deaths of people like Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, it weighed and it took a toll. Those things happened. So I want to get your thoughts on, how now that George Floyd has been added to the situation, can America come back from something like this? We've seen them come back from a lot in the past, but now that it's 2020 and almost 40 years behind, the civil rights era and all that, is there a coming back from this? You know what I mean? For America, like, can America do enough to be able to right all the wrongs that have happened over the course of the past few months? Is that something that's possible? Anybody can start.
Honestly, I feel like it's going to take a while because of the extent that it's come to and how angry people are. I just don't feel like if it ever does get to that point where it's like better or, right, I don't, for one, I don't think you can ever completely right the wrongs that have happened. Because just because you right them isn't going to bring those people back. It's not going to bring Breonna back. It's not going to bring George back. It's not going to bring anyone it's not going to bring them back. And people, no matter what, are always going to feel some type of way. But I feel like it could get better. It's going to take a long time, and it's not going to be anytime soon, for sure.
Yeah, I think I agree with Mickayla. I don't think we can ever completely come back from what's happened these last few weeks in terms of Ahmaud and Breonna and George. But I think, for starters, I think we need to start taking those steps toward righting some of those wrongs. Like Mickayla said, we're never going to fully right those wrongs because it's not going to bring them back, sadly. But we can move forward in justice in their names. I think, first of all, the police system needs a massive. They need to be massively reformed. They need to So, I'm sorry. One of our family friends is one of the chief of police here in the city, and he says this isn't even these kind of situations aren't even in police training. They're just not. So I think incorporating those kind of situational trainings into basic cop training is a starter. Of course, I don't have all the answers because I'm not a cop. I've never studied this in depth, but I think there just needs to be a lot more situational awareness about this. And I think, for starters, I think they need to make it clear, unless attacked, unless they're in immediate danger, not to use excessive force or guns or violence, unless absolutely necessary, unless other people's lives are at risk, or unless their lives are at risk, in point blank period. So yeah, I think that's how I feel about that.
To be honest, I feel like America, everybody, people with protests, everybody else need to have a discussion with officers in your cities, in your states, and just really have a discussion, and, no cameras, no voice recording, because sometimes when you have the camera within the police officer's face, they always have to say the right thing and always have to abide by what to say, what not to say, but really have a discussion with them to see how they feel and see how they feel, and And what do you say to all this that's happening in our world? I believe we will get through this by having more discussions about it, within creating more change as well. And yeah, like you said, Aidan, with the excessive force, but it seems like most of the time when you see officers, sometimes they don't use excessive force on white people or Asians or non-people of color, but black people or people of color that use excessive force. You know, you got all these weapons. You got a baton, you got a taser, you got all this. So, and you have a gun. And it seems like they rather use the gun more than they use any other weapons as well. So it's also knowing more information about that police officer as well. What have they done in the past, and what are they trying to do in the present? I know I have 3 cousins that are police officers. One's in Dallas, one's in New Orleans, and one's in Memphis. And I talked to them. You know, they're really outraged about the situation. And, you know, like you said, they don't, that's not in their training to do that. Even though it's like, and another thing, it's like, when someone is paying you to protect and serve them, and this is what you do, it's like, I don't know, you know, I've always thought like, wow, you know, how can you go to sleep at night knowing that you forcibly killed someone like that? You know, how can you wake up in the morning and just, oh, it's a brand new day, you know, how? You know, it's like, in that video, he just smirked like it was funny. And then how you see these other people online, especially non-people of color, that are trying to react that same incident. That's not okay. If it was the other way around, if that was a black officers choking a white man, that wouldn't happen. And if we acted as it was funny, it would have been rude. It would have been just terrible to act like that. But it seemed like to us, we always have to prove that we're human. We always have to prove that we have emotions. We always have to prove all this stuff. And constantly again, it's like, I'm tired. My body is drained of me explaining to you, or you, how I feel. So I pray to God that we'll get through this, but it's more than prayer that we have to get through this. We can pray all we want, but we always have to, but at the end of the day, we have to implement discussions and change in our world. So, yeah.
Well said, man. Well said. Anybody else?
I think that maybe something we could act on to bring change. Yes, discussions are actually, I think that, you know, a lot of problems are solved through talking things out. And yes, it can't be violent when we address people like this, because when we're violent, then they're violent. So if we have a violent discussion, you know, just attacking them, then we won't get anywhere, because they're going to attack back, and they're going to think that they're going to feel attacked. So we have to be peaceful in the way we talk about these issues with the people who do these issues, who cause these issues. Discussions, but also, like, I think another good step is just to show solidarity, you know, that we stand with the people in Minneapolis, you know, that to show American society that we feel like that too. You know what I mean? We have to get people to unite, and then show that this really affects everyone. Like, you can't live peacefully knowing that, you know, if you're stopped, it's very likely that someone's just going to shoot you because you reached for your license. You know what I mean? It's very scary, and we need to show people how we feel. We need to make more well, not necessarily as violent as the protests in Minneapolis, but we have to have like marches or boycotts, something to get our point across to people, and something that won't turn violent. Because also, although it does bring change, like when we're violent, as I said, you know, they're getting more scared of, about us. You know what I mean? Like when we burn things down to the ground, like that causes fear, and it doesn't help us in any way too. It does bring change, but at the same time, it does hurt us. I'll just reiterate that. But just having something, some sort of event across the nation that shows people that this is how we feel can bring change. And that's all I have to say.
I'd like to add too on what Aaron, like you said, with the protests that have been happening in Minneapolis and all around the world, it's like at some time when you see burning stuff, cars or whatever, it's like now people have an example of what those people are, and they try to use that. Like I was looking at Fox News, it's a whole nother story, but anyway, it's like how they try to put in the perspective how, oh, these are people that are doing this, they're burning this stuff down, oh, like hide your wives, hide your kids, kind of like that, and it's like constantly like, what's happening, don't to be honest, what's happening, what's happening in our world today. You're trying to point at this perspective like, oh, they're just burning everything down for no reason. They're hitting cars for no reason, everything. But it's like they're doing it for a reason, to get their voices heard. Yeah. Even though we don't agree with their tactics, but still, we need to hear what they have to say. So, yeah.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys. Aidan, I know you got to scoot pretty soon, right? Yeah?
I can stay around for like 10 more minutes, but then, yeah, I gotta
cool.
scoot, gotta finish thing.
Oh, cool. Actually, you have more time than I thought you did. All right, wonderful. Seth, do you want to weigh in on this real quick before we move on?
Sure. I'll just add something really quickly. I think another very important thing to bring up is the discrepancy, and specifically how our government has covered protests over George Floyd's murder versus the protests in Michigan over the stay-at-home order. I think that's a very important thing to bring up, because the president of the United States called the protesters of George Floyd's murder, he called them thugs. He used some extremely disrespectful language, and I forget exactly what the phrase was, but I don't know exactly about this, but I heard it was a reference to a white supremacy slogan, and that is something that is just completely unacceptable and terrible, versus the by far majority white protesters in Michigan over the stay-at-home order. He called most of them good people. Well, and the discrepancy in that is terrible. And then when you add the context of one group is protesting police brutality and the murder of an unarmed man, versus the other group is protesting not being able to get a haircut. That's insane that the group that is protesting their hair being too long is getting treated with more respect than the person or the group that is protesting an unarmed man's murder and systemic racism.
I would also like to add that I think that those people were armed, right? The people
they were armed
Michigan,
in the Capitol building.
Yeah, they were.
So what the hell are we doing here, guys?
But you think about it, like the cops were trying to calm down, like chill, everybody just calm down and all that. If that was some people of color, black folks, Latinos, oh heck no. It'll be World War IV, and
just go skip over 3? You just go skip
3,
over
4,
3?
5, 6, whatever, all of them, and it's like, and you see them yelling at them, I want a haircut, I want this and that, with their AK-47s or their pistols and all that, all the the guns and all that, and it's like just everybody calm down.
Yeah.
The state and all that stuff. Then you see people comparing this to slavery and all this stuff, and it's like, come on, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, dude, totally. I think it's crazy. Will we ever get to a state where it's half of what it used to be before all this nonsense happened? I don't think so. Because it's weird. It's funny because I feel like Obama did so much for us. You know what I mean? Obama did so much. He did great in his 8 years. One of the absolute greatest presidents this country has seen. Right, but you take the 4 years that we've already had with this doofus that's in office now, right? And all that work just comes tumbling down. You know what I mean? Like the walls of Jericho. It's crazy to think that, that all the work that Obama did for people of color, for people a part of the LGBTQ community, for people who, for the poor and rich alike, for the middle class, all the things he did, all the good stuff that we remember Obama for is now being torn down by a man who is basically living off of his own ego. The fact that he has the money and he has the power, and now he has like the power of the sun in the palm of his hand, Spider-Man 2 reference. Anyway, now that he has that power, he's going ballistic, right? So I think it's weird in that sense that all this can happen. So I don't know. My answer is I don't know if America will ever actually, see any sort of prominence again, because who knows? Because come November, we could be talking about what the next 4 years of his term looks like, versus what the 4 years of Joe Biden will look like. And it's getting more and more likely so that we'll be talking about Trump come November. So it's weird that way. Recently, this past week on Tuesday, it might have been Wednesday, but I got to meet Congresswoman Jackie Pelosi. Nope, that's not it. Jackie Spears. There we go. That's right. I mixed them together. Wrong. Definitely wrong.
All right.
Definitely wrong.
Two different people.
Yep.
No, get it.
And Jackie Spears. That was two different people.
I understand. I got it. I met Congresswoman Jackie Spears. That's what I was saying. Anyway, so I met her. She was down the street at the Boys and Girls Club helping out with their feeding program during the quarantine, right? And I got to meet her and I got to talk to her. But the one thing I didn't get to talk to her about was the situation like this, and, some of the stuff that I would like to see and how I felt about the whole situation. So I guess my next question is, if you got to speak to Congresswoman Jackie Spears, who represents our area of California, and you got to speak to any person who, has some sort of rung in law making or law enforcement, that directly connects to the people in the White House, what would you tell them? What would you speak to them? What would you say? What is something that you would talk about?
I have to go in a second here, so if I can go first.
Absolutely.
Right, all right. I think honestly, I'd ask you a question. So what can we do as an individual to help prevent events like these happening again, or just what can we do? Because I think a lot of us generally don't know, and I don't even know, because I'm newly 18, I'm newly a registered voter. What can we now do as registered voters or adults to help? Because I don't know, and I think a lot of other people don't know in terms of government and law. How can we help, and how can we help get this point across?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that building off of that, what could we do to bring change? Because, just that. I'd talk about that.
Nice. Yeah, I'd like to add on with Aidan and Aaron that, but also, to be honest, most of these congressmen and women have been at their seat for more than 5 decades. You know, they've seen from everything, and it's like, you know, we need more people like AOC. I'm going to pronounce her name, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and more people that are young and know millennials that know what we're going through as well. Because you see, like, even though there's some good congressmen and women, but, you know, I'm not trying to judge them by their age and, you know, but at the same time, it's like they still don't know what we're going through, how the progressive technology and like all what's happening in our world. And, you know, they say that, oh, you guys don't understand politics, or, oh, you don't understand this or that. But it's like we do, because we live it. We live through it, you know. But, I spoke to Jackie Spear before, but not this incident, but a long time ago. And I would like to say to her and all the other congressmen and women, like, you know, what do we need to do? So even though we have to vote, what other changes we need to do other than vote? Because sometimes, you know, voting does help at some point, but at the same time, what is another thing? Because I feel like there's something more other than voting. Because, you know, like people who voted for Donald Trump, I don't understand how you like this man for 4 years. What has he done to these communities like ours? You know, it's like, and the stuff that he says, it's like, what did you say? You know, and it's like the judges that he appointed, like, they'll be with us for the next 4 to 5 decades, you know, and we're going to have to fight with them on that, on different discussions. And, you know, and it's just constantly like, what else do we have to do? So I feel like voting, even though that's one step to that process, but what are multiple steps so we can see change? So, yeah.
Yeah, and talking about Donald Trump, it's just like I've seen statistics that point out that Obama really did everything that he's taking credit for. I don't know if you guys have seen that too, but like everything that Obama did, Trump is taking credit for that, despite that, he's blaming Obama for problems that like are happening right now. So that's one, and two, like the people who support Trump, I feel, are like rich people, but like the problem with rich people is that they've never lacked things that we lack as middle class and as minorities, or poor people too. Like they've had everything, and you know, they've never felt that feeling that, oh, I'm lacking this, I don't have this, will there be food on my table tomorrow? They've never felt that. And Trump is exactly this type of person, because I don't think he's ever felt hungry. And thank God that I've never felt that either, because I'm middle class. But I know that poor people feel that all the time. And people like who support Trump are people who have never felt these feelings before. I've never felt, if I get pulled over by a cop, will I be shot? They've never felt that. Yeah. And, you know, they can't, you know what I mean? Like, they can't relate to us, and they don't see our problems. So that's why they vote for Trump, because he promises things, but he never comes through with those. You know what I mean? Yeah. What happened to the wall? Thank God he didn't build it. But, you know, he can't make those promises. Make Mexico pay for something that's going to be built on our side of the fence. And let me just point out that the part that we're trying to block off from Mexico is something that used to belong to Mexico. So, you know what I mean? And, you know, just to close that up, this generation, the generation in charge right now, has left us with a lot of problems, and we need to fix them.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so guys, I gotta go. It's been a huge honor to meet you guys. It's been a great discussion, and I keep recording because I want to see what you guys said. So thank you, Judge, thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me express my opinions and thoughts on this issue, especially as it's so prevalent and fresh, especially this month. It's been an honor. Thank you guys so much.
All right, Aidan, take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
See you later.
Take care.
But I want to add on to something. So with it, like I remember Don Lemon said about Trump, like does not show leadership and how Donald Trump is envious of Barack Obama. What he has created, how people just love him, and it's like no one loves him, only Republicans, maybe most of them, or people that are on the left side or whatever. But it's like I don't understand how we went from Obama 8 years to this person who has really like started and said like tweeting all the time about this person, that person, then how all these stuff is happening, like with Charlottesville, or it was somewhere I think in Virginia, where he said, oh, there are fine people on both sides, and it's like his people were the people that were attacking other people that are trying to fight for what is right. He was trying to collect votes then. But constantly it's like we're reminded that we have to do better for this country, because it's like seeing what's going on, it's like it's being destroyed every brick by brick, every piece by piece, and it's like wow, like you said, Aaron, with our generation, we have a lot to clean up, a lot to build up again, and a lot to really know how to fix it up properly so we could do it for our children and their children. So, yeah.
Yeah, Seth, go ahead.
Sorry, my computer froze for like a solid minute and a half. Can you just catch me up on what was just said so I know?
We were going over talking about the things that we would say to fellow congressmen and women, and Jules can recap what he said better than I can.
I just said, Seth, how Donald Trump is, he's what the stuff he says is really impacting the way we live our world, and what's happening through I forget, it was Charlottesville to now, and with the government shutdown, and now with the COVID-19 pandemic, it's like he's in denial. He never admits he's wrong. And I don't understand how you can work with someone that is the commander in chief and has the power to do anything he wants, but he doesn't understand how to be a president. He's working this country as a business. He doesn't care about people.
Yeah.
He cares about the economy, the money, moving. And he keeps saying he wants the states to open back up, open them, the restaurants, because the money is tight for him. The money is losing. Same with these governors, how they reopen quickly and then they have to shut down again because there's increases of COVID-19 deaths and everything. And how first he said, oh, it hasn't passed 100,000 and blah blah blah, even though it was 60,000. And it's like he doesn't care. He really doesn't care. And how people say, oh, he's for us, he's for the Americans and blah blah blah. No, he isn't. All he cares about is money. It seems like I realized America with people that are in power, they only care about money.
Yeah.
They don't care about us.
Mm-hmm.
The little people, they care about the big people with the money so they can supply more money to the economy.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and adding on to that, like for Donald Trump, the dead people are just statistics. And, every little lie, every single life that is lost because of this pandemic affects more than just one person. Because, have, let's say, the father of a family dies, that affects the whole family. You know what I mean? It's affecting so much people, but he doesn't care about that. For him, it's just a statistic on his notes that he's brought in. So it's just ridiculous. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Seth, would you like to weigh in? The question was, what would you say to a fellow congresswoman or congressman if you had the chance to talk to them about what's been going on? What is the one thing that you would say to them so that you hope that they do something with that to try and create change?
Sure. Something that I think is really important to focus on, and it's been going on for decades on decades on decades, and it's not just the root of the problem with the president, but it's been the root of the problem for the United States for a long period of time, is the discrepancy in prosecution for the same crimes in between people of color and white people. I Googled a statistic earlier. White people and black people, basically, when it relates to smoking marijuana or having marijuana possession, have basically the same odds of having marijuana or smoking it, but yet black people are imprisoned for smoking marijuana at a rate 4 times higher than white people. That's a huge discrepancy that is insane to me. And when I think there are black people or people of color that are in jail for such a long period of time for such petty crimes like a possession of a little weed, and I compare that to some things that some white people have gotten away with, it's insane. It's mind-boggling to me, and that's hurting a community that so badly that's faced such systemic racism. And when you add that on top of that, it's just absolutely horrible. So I think that's something that really needs to be focused on more and should not be lost.
I would love to add on to that, because I think that a very important point that that needs to be brought up is that sometimes, like, people in these minority communities, because redlining, there's like neighborhoods that are just black people, and those communities are very poor, and sometimes there's no other choice to get, you have a job that pays very little, at a store. You need more money. You just simply need it to bring food to the table. And sometimes the only option is to sell these things on the streets. And, it's just not fair how people think, just lock them up in prison for so long. You know what I mean? It's just, that's a very big issue.
And to add on to you guys, so how back in the day, people have thought that marijuana was bad, it was terrible. Now it's like everyone's doing business with it. It's like, you say it's bad in the 80s, 90s, and all that. Now it's like, everyone's making money off of it. You got these dispensaries, if that's the name of it, in Oakland and San Francisco and San Jose, and everyone's selling it. It's good. It's making money. Everyone's investing it. And it's like, well, I'll be darned. It's like, you say it's bad, but when the government says it's bad, but when they want to make money off of it, it's okay. It's always okay when they're making the money instead of us. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Mickayla, please. What is one thing that you would say to a person of higher authority, about that?
I think for me, one big thing, like when I think about moving forward and moving everything that everyone has said, I think about how can we bring more people from our generation into these conversations, into these acts, even just looking like now, like a lot of people our age aren't really involved. Like they may hear about it, they know about it, but they're maybe not really active or a part of these conversations. So my big thing with how could we bring more people from our generation, and not even just the generation, like more females and more different, diverse people into these conversations and into these making these new changes, so that way we can move forward. But yeah, that's just something I think about when I think about all of these things, because I think without having that diversity or more people from our generation, it wouldn't be as much.
Yeah, great. Thank you. No, totally. For me, I think if I would have had a little bit more time to talk to Congresswoman Spears, I would tell her that, I would also, Mickayla, I would also talk about.
Spears.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you, Jules. I appreciate it. No, I definitely think, this generation would be on, a discussion I would have, but I would also talk about the future generation. And I say this because if we go back a few years, I don't care about the future generation. If I'm going to be completely honest, if we look back a few years and we're having this conversation and we're talking about this right now, the future generation does not cross my mind at all. Maybe it does in a sense because I have a little sister, Raven, of course, right? But I consider her to be a part of our generation because she's able-minded enough to know what's going on. She just turned 11 yesterday, so she knows well enough, that this is going on. She knows that the color of her skin and the fact that she's not, mere Jules. She's not a black man, but in fact a black woman, and that she's like Mickayla. She knows that she's already at a huger disadvantage, right? So she knows enough about that. So that's why I consider her to be a part of this generation. But now it's 2020, and things have happened in my life to the point where I got to start thinking about the future generation. Why? Because I'm an uncle, and I have a 2-year-old niece who is black and beautiful and looks just like my sister when she was 2 years old. And I got to think about a world that she's going to have to grow up in. You know what I mean? I got to think about, telling her to be in the house at a certain hour. You know what I mean? And that if you don't, there's going to be problems, right? That you don't get to hang around certain people, especially dudes. Another story, right? But I also have to tell her the harsh reality. And the harsh reality, the sad truth, is that she's a black woman, and she's going to be at multiple disadvantages in her life. And I'm going to have to be I'm one of the ones, because obviously her father is there to do it too, right? But I'm going to have to be one of the ones who tells her about the struggles of being black in America, who has to tell her about the struggles of the 60s and Dr. King and Rosa Parks and all the racism that we faced and slavery. That falls on me as the uncle, right? That falls on me. So I would definitely talk about the future generation and the plans to make sure that they're protected and that their best interests are safe. Because I don't think I'd be able to live with myself if I knew that this is the world that I'm leaving behind for her when she gets to be Raven's age, or when she gets to be my age or her father's age. You know what I mean? 20, 30 years down the line, she's going to be looking at me, and if she can't say thank you for teaching me, thank you for letting me know, then that means I failed, right? And that's a huge fear of mine, right? But I think if I was able to talk to someone about it and be like, yo, I have a niece, and she shouldn't have to grow up in a world like this. You know what I mean? So I think it's a question that needs to be answered. It's a question that needs to be asked, much less as well as answered. So yeah, that's what I would talk about, the future generation. Because looking back on it, now that I have someone a part of the future generation, I've given it a little bit more thought, and I'm like, yeah, this future generation, this is make or break. We can do what we can, and the generation that came before us did what they could, and now it's up to us. And now we're in their situation because this future generation is going to have no one to look to but us, right? And we have the resources and the tools, right? And the creative minds to do it. So it's on us. It's on us as a responsibility.
One more thing. Go
ahead.
I realize one of the things that the older generation have is media. Like, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that. Now it's like it's both a good thing and bad thing because it's showing us what our world is, from the U.S. to Asia and Africa and everywhere, showing the good and the bad, and bringing those negatives and try to find out what is the solution to that. So, people always say like, you guys said this, or, this means this, or like we're telling our experiences, but when an experience happens or when something happens and we record it, now I wouldn't say understand, now they see it through their eyes instead of me telling them what happened. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, that's a wrap here, guys. Final thoughts. We'll just do that real quick. Final thoughts, and then I'll let you guys get out of here. But I just wanted to thank y'all for doing this. Really, I do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. It means a lot. We got so many creative minds, and I'm so happy that you all were the people who can make it possible. So yeah, thank you. This was amazing, and this definitely won't be. This is the first time, but it definitely won't be the last. So thank you. So final thoughts from everybody, and then that's it, guys. Thank you.
I just want to say,
I mean,
thank
like,
you guys.
Go.
You go ahead. Go ahead, Mickayla.
No, it's fine.
This
Okay.
is what happens when you bring together the most humble people on the planet. This is what happens. I'm humble myself, obviously, but when you bring all these people into a conversation and they're, no, you go, no, I insist, please. This is what happens. Somebody better go.
Okay, I better go. Okay, all right. I just want to say thank you, Judge, for putting this on. Great to meet these wonderful people, man, and just have a discussion from a peer to peer, about what is really going on in our world today and how can we find solutions to benefit our world in the long run. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, for me, it's a total honor and a pleasure to be a part of this conversation. It's been an honor meeting all of you guys. I know that this will definitely not be the last conversation we have, and I'm looking forward to the other conversations. And to close things up, I think like really soon we could start forming things to be a part of this change, and do something ourselves, because I'm pretty sure that just like we right now, we feel like we don't have a voice. There's many other people out there that don't feel that feel the same way as we do, and are being like, okay, what can I do to bring change? And I think as soon as we get everyone to be able to have a voice, like change will happen. And I'm really looking forward to being a part of that change. So thank you, guys.
I'll just add on really quickly. Yeah, this was so great. Thank you so much, Judge, for coordinating this. It's really important to talk about such pressing issues right now, and specifically getting a youth perspective on it that is so often overlooked. That is so important. And it was really great meeting all of you. Yeah, this was an amazing discussion, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Same here. Thank you, Judge, for putting this all together. It's like you said, this is definitely just the start. This is not the end. I'm so glad that I got to hear each and every one of your perspectives, and I hope we get to talk again.
Yeah, guys, listen, I can't say it enough. Thank you. This was just an inkling of an idea, I've always wanted a podcast of sorts, and, I've been in the works making different ideas, but this was definitely a pressing situation that I needed to talk about, and I realized that my wants and desires can be fulfilled by talking about this. And so since it's an issue that I care about, and since it's an idea that I've wanted, that has been in my mind for some time, I just had to mesh them together, and I had to do it. So thank you guys for making this dream a reality. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. I love you all endlessly. Thank you for your support and your love. For those of you who are watching this on my IGTV, most likely, this will probably go up on my YouTube channel later. But it's coming. It's coming. Secrets. Shh. But anyway, thank you all for watching. I appreciate it. I hope something was said that, makes you want to go out and create change and do something about the world that we're living in, because we need you desperately, and only together can we actually create the change that we want to see in this world. Because the thing is, only by living together, laughing together, and loving one another can life truly be fulfilled and the prophecy completed. So thank you all for watching. I love you all. Thank you, Jules. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Mickayla. I appreciate you all. Have a great day. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.